Welcome to the Business and Bubbly podcast. This is the place for women in business who are on the journey of building their big ideas and want to have fun along the way. It's for those of us who also know we aren't meant to do business or life alone. Hi, I'm Charity Majors, your host and the founder of Business and Bubbly. Think of this kind of like the can I pick your brain chats that you've always wanted to have with those who are doing epic things, plus business besties, hype girls, and getting into massive action towards your next big idea all in the same place. Oh, and bubbles, because if you're not having fun along the way, you're not doing it right. Together, we'll unlock what it means to be seen, known, heard, and championed all along the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and being a woman in business building big dreams. Each week, I'll bring you a quick sip business tip, as well as interviews from top experts that make you feel like you're getting bottle service for your business. We're having the raw and real conversations and chatting about all the things, the messy middle, the pivots, scaling, the good days and the bad days, because here we do real. It's where we can work hard, play hard, cry it out, and dance it out all at the same time without being judged. This is a place where we are in the arena together and we are each other's biggest fans because most of us have enough comments from the cheap seats. It's where our too much is par for the course and where the gaps of our not enough are filled in by the other epic women that are around us. It's where we can be unapologetic about the mission we are on, about the big dreams on our heart, and the business we are building without having to be perfect or have it all together, or even pretend to. It's a supportive community where business is being done amongst like-minded women, because when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. It's a place where you have the support around you to get out of your comfort zone and go after your big ideas, because even when you fail forward or when you reach the top, you know it won't be alone. Also, if you know anything about me, you'll know that I'm obsessed with creating platforms that lift up other women to be seen and heard and known. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite you to list your business on our directory called Find Women in Business. All you've got to do is text the word directory to 833-231-8098, and I'll text you the link back to get your free listing. This is also a great way to connect with other women in business from around the world, so definitely check it out. And now let's get to the good stuff. Grab a glass of your favorite beverage, Prosecco, bubbly water, or whatever your flavor is, and let's dive in. Are you with me? Here we go. Welcome to the show today. And you're going to be obsessed with this episode and fall in love with this guest. But today's guest is Yara Golden, and she is not a copywriter. She is not a seller. She is not a storyteller, but she has created a really awesome new branch and a niche for herself. And she goes over the art of story selling. She got her start in online business as a relationship coach, but as she worked with other couples in strained relationships, Yara discovered that something that she couldn't ignore, that most relationships struggle because of bad communication. Isn't that so true, you guys? She became obsessed with figuring out what makes someone a great communicator and realized that a simple shift in the way that we all communicate with each other can dramatically repair and build not just personal relationships, but entire businesses. So the same is true for entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs struggle in business because of bad communication with their customers and audience. And so Yara started writing story-based pieces for businesses in order to help them bridge the communication gap between the entrepreneur and their audience. And she watched their businesses explode with new customers. In this episode, we talk a little bit about her background as going from a stay-at-home mom and a stay-at-home wife to things dramatically changing in her relationship and needing to do something quick and drastic to provide for her kids. We talk about how she unapologetically became a coach, how you become the person in the gap, right? When we are not where we used to be, but we're not quite where we want to be yet. And how honoring the place of if you might be doing the thing that leads to the next thing, right? Because there are, if you're an entrepreneur or just a human being, right, there are pivots and there are stepping stones along the way. Yara also shares her awesome story selling framework, her 6 steps to the story selling framework that you are going to love. So make sure you guys grab your note pen, your notebook, whatever a note pen is. Grab a notebook, grab a pen, or earmark this episode so that you can make sure that if you are in a place where you are driving, like I don't want you to take notes if you're driving, guys, safety first, but you're going to want to come back to this because the story selling framework is awesome and you're going to love Yara. So enjoy the episode, you guys. All right, you guys, well, welcome to the show today. I'm excited to not only have you guys in your ear or have me in your ear and have my special guest here, whether you are driving in the car or working out or hanging out with me today. It's always an honor to get to connect with you guys. And thank you for just being here on the podcast. I'm excited. You guys heard Yara's awesome introduction and just her bio and all the great things that she's doing. So Yara, thank you so much for taking some time and sharing with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Well, so everyone, obviously they heard how awesome you were with your bio. But I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit just with your story before the glory, right? Like what was a little bit of your journey that got you to where you are today as you unapologetically, which I love following you on social media and seeing what you're doing and how you have just stepped in and owned and flourished this whole storytelling, story selling business that you have created, and how you're serving others at a huge capacity. But right, it wasn't always like that, right?
No, it definitely wasn't always like that. But yeah, so you want me to talk about my bumps and bruises and scrapes and all of the
Yeah, let's kind of do a little rewind and share a little bit of your story, what happened before you got to this place of aligning more with your purpose.
Yeah, totally. So I actually came into the online world circa 2014. And at that point, I was going through a divorce and I needed to find a way to take care of myself and my kids. And I needed to find a way to do that quickly. I had actually been a stay-at-home mom / stay-at-home wife for like close to 15 years at that point. My kids were really young, but I just had been in a situation where I didn't really need to worry about anything. You know, I was very much taken care of. And so divorce was definitely my, as our friend Russell Brunson would say, my plata or plomo moment, right? Like do or die. And it was really interesting how it happened because when I got divorced, there wasn't really a bad guy in our breakup, right? Like I had done things, he had done things, and we were very much moving towards a co-parenting relationship that was healthy. It was mutual, right? Like this was something that we were both choosing. But the people who were around me, as many people experience, I think, when they go through something like this, wanted to pick sides. And they wanted to point the finger. They wanted to have the victim and the hero. And I was just like, no, like that's not the scenario here. And so I did the only thing that I really knew how to do at that point, and that was to kind of go public with my story. And so I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. And that's kind of the way that I process my emotions, the way that I make sense of the things that I'm going through. And obviously I was going through a lot. And so I took to social media. I took literally to Facebook. I made my profile public and I was like, if you want to know what happened, I'm going to tell you. And so that was really the first time that I stepped into what I would call controlling the narrative, right? And I was like, if you want to know, I'll tell you, but I'm going to tell you from my point of view, from my perspective, from my experience. And the most incredible thing happened was I started waking up to like hundreds of friend requests. I'm talking like 80, 90, over 100 people just messaging me overnight saying, how are you doing this? Like, nobody's talking about these things. I'm so inspired by you. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a disaster, right? Like, this is a problem. Like, this is not a good thing to be inspired by. But what I came to realize was that it wasn't my situation that was inspiring them. It was the way that I was dealing with, like, quote unquote, dealing with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, in my desire to also want to make money and like make a living so that I could take care of myself and my kids, I was prompted by my partner now, James. He's like, well, why don't you just become a relationship coach? Like, this is what people are coming to you for. This is what they're asking you about. You're spending all of your time talking to them about it. Like, you're not bothered. So why don't you do that? And that was really my jumping off point, right? I was like, okay, I'm in the middle of my divorce. I'm now a relationship coach, which made no sense to me. But I think as I got going and as I started helping people, I understood how much I had actually learned through that process, right? Like, about myself, about him, about relationships, about communication, about dissolving relationships, about being authentic and vulnerable and truthful, and all of these big, scary topics that nobody, at least I felt nobody was talking about at the time. And so I had some success there. Like, I had a couple, months where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making $10,000 and this is amazing. And then I had months where I was like, holy crap, how am I going to buy groceries? And so there's this big up and down. But I just kept going, right? And I kept going and I kept going and I kept sharing. And what I found was that as I would write, I was very much writing in the moment of becoming the person that I was on my way towards becoming, right? None of us start out as the person that we want to be, right? It's like we're over here and then there's this giant chasm and the person we want to be is over here. And all we're trying to do is trying to figure out how in the world are we going to get over there? But I was being very real and very honest about that journey for myself. And so more and more people were following me. And my method of communication was always writing. And so after hitting my head against the wall for years, trying to have a bigger impact, trying to have a bigger audience, trying to have a bigger income, in January of last year, actually a year ago, I had a business owner approach me and she said, hey, I read everything that you write. I absolutely love it. I feel like I could have written it myself. Have you ever considered writing for somebody else? And as funny as it may sound, I hadn't. Like, I just knew that was the way that I communicated, the way that I processed things. And so I just kind of sat there and was like, no, I really haven't. And she asked me if I would write for her and her company. And I gave it a shot, and her audience completely ate it up. Like, they absolutely loved it. And so what it really turned into was me taking all of the coaching and all of the work that I'd been doing in helping people in their relationship and as couples. And I just superimposed it on entrepreneurs and their audiences, right? So now I was like, well, if you're having a problem being vulnerable or sharing a part of your story or getting a message out there in your relationship, you're probably having that exact same problem manifest itself in your work, right? And so what I get to do today is really have entrepreneurs share those stories with me, the story of how they became who they are, how they came to do the things that they do, and how they came to help the people that they help, and tell those stories in a way that is really shareable and relatable with their audiences so that they know, like, and trust them enough to actually do business with them. So that was a huge pivot for me. It was it was like, I mean, I don't know, like people might look at me now and be like, oh my gosh, like she was an overnight success. Like it only took a year to get from where she was to where she is today. But it was years in the making. Like it was a lot of tripping and falling on my face. It was a lot of self-doubt and insecurity. It was a lot of trial and error, until I finally, but it was just consistency, right? I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And as opportunities presented themselves, I also stepped into those and said, sure, I'll give it a shot. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but I trust in my ability to make something amazing out of what comes from it. You know what I mean?
Mm, that's so good. I love that. It's the thing that leads to the thing, right?
Totally. And it's about who you become, right? It's not about the destination, it's about who you become on the way there, and like learning to enjoy that process and say, okay, I may not be exactly where I want to be yet, but I know that I'm on trajectory to get there. And I think that's what's really important to focus on
Yeah,
sometimes.
that's so good. I love that. It's, I just posted the other day, it was something about it was a quote where it's like, the process is the purpose, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about sailing, the person sailing the boat, it's not like this straight line to get to their destination. It's these minute diversions, it's kind of this little shift, like shifting to the left and then shifting to the right, but staying on course and staying the course. I just love how, like, whatever the pivot was, your journey, your story is still revolved around, or kind of was guided by, this whole writing thing and this whole communication and being authentic and being vulnerable, which I think is so needed, right? Especially now with social media, where it's like everyone's just seeing like the filtered perfect selfie, even though there's like 20 of them on the camera roll, and like,
Where we look like dinosaurs, or like, oh.
totally.
Yeah.
So I actually want to go back to a couple of things that you said, because there's some really great nuggets in here. There's about the power in going public with your story, right? The things that most people like kind of like shove in the background, keep in the dark, and don't necessarily share until they're out of it. And I know for me, this is something that, and it's different for everyone. And obviously, whatever you are doing in your journey, what you feel is best for you as you're listening to this, is like, do that. I know for me, when I had, we lost a child, and I like went dark. Like I just like disappeared off of social media, which is very rare for me to, right? Being so outward facing and being so involved in the community and sharing a lot. And, like I used to have a TV show. And so all of a sudden, like, I just went dark. Like people are like, what happened? Like, where did Charity go? Like, whoa, kind of thing. But, I can totally see just the magic and the power and the inspiration that can come from like just going public with your story and controlling the narrative. I loved what you said with that. So let's chat a little bit about like what it means to control the narrative and how you processed through some of that, even when there were probably like big emotions and big scary things to talk about, and how that worked for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Um, First, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that you had gone through that. That's like, it's huge. And it's a testament to you that like you're now openly sharing about that, because I think that there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of different things that don't ever express them. And I don't care how long it takes somebody to talk about something. Once they do, I think that needs to be honored. Right. So I think just even for yourself and for your listeners, it's like, it's never too late to share your story. Right. And it's never too late to go back and glean lessons from what you've been through, because I'm a firm believer that once you're able to pull a lesson out of something that happened in your life and experience, you don't lose, right? You always win, because you're always moving forward. You're always learning something that can be applied. So first and foremost, that. How to control the narrative, how important it is to go public with your story. I think it cannot be overstated, because as humans, we connect in our sameness.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm always looking for ways to have my reader, my listener, the person watching say, me too, right? Like I've felt like that too. And so when it comes to sharing your story, we can go back to somebody like Brene Brown, who tells us, when you're being vulnerable, you feel small, you feel weak, you feel exposed, you feel like you can be hurt. But to everyone that's watching you, you look strong and confident and powerful, right? We admire vulnerability in other people, but when we're the ones that are required to do it, we feel teeny tiny and like we could get squished at any moment. And so I think one of the things that I learned through sharing my divorce and like all of the lessons that I was going through, and you're right, like those big, scary, deep, dark emotions that people just don't know what to do with, was that I called out to everybody who had been in that situation before, or who found themselves in that situation, or who thought they might soon find themselves in that situation, and was giving them a very real look at what this looked like, and asking for help, asking for advice. And also, when most of the time I don't talk about what I'm going through as I'm going through it. I talk about it once I find myself on the other side and I can look back and say, oh, this is what I learned, right? So then I would kind of walk people through how I got to where I am now that I'm speaking about it in retrospect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's a matter of you having your emotions or your story versus your emotions or your story having you.
100%. Yes. Yes. Like I control the story does not control me. Right. And so, but I think you have to kind of capture it in the moment, because when you get triggered, when you get sad, when you get depressed or you're in grief or whatever, the emotions are so big and they're so real. And to try to recreate that is a little inauthentic. Right. So I would sit and I would write and I would just be like, oh, like I remember one of the times in particular, I was out for a run and I had my headphones in and I was running and this song came on, and my ex-husband and I were like really big into EDM. And so it was an EDM song. And I remembered the exact moment at a concert where this song had come on and I was like with my friends dancing, and he had run out of the restroom and was like, babe, this is our song. And he picked me up and he spun me around, which was a super, super happy moment for me. But now that I was running and I was in this mess, it was a really sad moment. And I was like crying because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel all of this emotion that's like happy, but now I feel the loss of it. And I'm like in crisis right now on my run on the sidewalk. And I remember having the thought, this doesn't like the fact that this is never going to happen again doesn't negate the fact that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, I can give myself permission to allow this to still be a happy moment.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I learned something, right? I was just like, holy crap, if I can do that with a song, I can do that with pictures and with memories and with vacations and all of these other things. And so that would be something that I would write about, right? Where I was just like, hey, like this is what I was doing, this is what I was feeling, this is what I realized, and this is how I'm going to apply that moving forward. And so it just became a stepping stone for me rather than somewhere where I crashed and burned. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I would control the narrative. It was really doing the work, right? Like the damn work.
Right? It does ever feel like it's going to be over.
It just always pops up. There's like endless levels of the work, just for anyone who's wondering. It doesn't end. But it was really through doing the work and figuring out what my lesson was in that moment, and then opening up to the people who were interested in coming on that journey with me.
That's so good. I love that. And with permission to allow it, right? Because so many times I know when there is that emotional response or that trigger or the, right, like what you said, the happy thing, and now all of a sudden it's this sad thing that does trigger us. It's like, okay, like allow that to come up and out. But I love what you said, allow it to be the stepping stone and not a stopping point. Like, so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many things have happened in my life that I know for a fact would have stopped dozens of other people. And I'm just like, huh, that's interesting. That happened. Okay. What can I do with this now? Right? Like we all have, whether we're aware of it or not, we have a vision of what we would like our lives to be like. And as we sit here today, we have certain pieces available to us. And our job is to take those pieces and make the best version of that picture that we have in our minds as possible, right? And as we go through our journeys, some pieces come into play and some pieces go out of play. And you're like, oh, like I really wanted that one. But if you cry and whine and like stay stuck because you no longer have that piece, instead of focusing on what you do have and what you can create with that, that's where you stop, you know? And so I'm grateful that I don't know where I picked it up or where I learned it or how I came to be this way, but I just don't stop. Like I continue moving forward. I continue going after what it is that I want, even when I don't have crystal clarity around what that is.
That's so good. I love that.
Yeah.
Love it. The other thing I kind of want to circle back around to, and I know that this is it's somewhat of a hot topic in somewhat of the coaching world, if you will. And I want to go back to the little nugget about when your now partner with James said, like, well, you should just like be a relationship coach, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I love that, because for me, one of the limiting beliefs that held me back so much in my journey in the past was the imposter syndrome, right? Like, who are you to say that, or who are you to do that, or who are you to, like, you're not smart enough, so you should just get another degree or another certification or take another course, do another, like, read this next book before you get into action, before you do anything. And I was actually having a conversation the other day with a gal who, she has amazing insight to share and can serve people in a huge capacity, but she's like, but I'm not certified. and for me, and it's so funny, like, even like, right, so now I coach people on mindset and how to unapologetically show up and align with their purpose and define their voice and to take bold and inspired action and to reconnect with their divine source of inspiration. And it's so funny because sometimes I still hear that limiting belief of like, who are you to do this or to say that or to write about this in your book or to share about this in your course or whatever. And it's so funny, like, even for me, and I'll say this for you guys, if you're listening and if you suffer from the imposter syndrome as well, like, I don't know if it ever really goes away. And in my experience, like, I have a psychology degree, I have a coaching concentration, I have been coaching people on mindset and confidence in mind, body, and spirit for 14 years. And I still get the, who are you to say that, you guys? So I love your boldness to just like, and maybe there were some moments of that which you can share about, like, you just like unapologetic, like, yeah, I'm a relationship coach.
It was quite a leap from I haven't worked ever basically to I'm a relationship coach. And I'll tell you a story that I actually don't think that I've told. And this was the first offer that I ever made. Right. And so James had told me, you should just be a relationship coach. I was spending hours of my day just coaching people through Messenger, right? Like when they would ask me questions and I would just sit there and help them through whatever they were going through. And we had a really close friend of ours who was dealing with a lot of stuff in his relationship. And I was like, man, I could really help him if he would just open up to me about it, And so I finally got the nerve to like ask him, right? And I was just like, hey, I'd be happy to help you on like a more professional level if you're interested. And he was just like, yeah, he's like, shoot me over a quote. And
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah. And I was like, babe, I need to write a quote. How do I write a quote? And so he
Starting
like,
with the sales funnel and the pay me now and the button. And
no, like that was not even nuh-uh. I was like, I need to type something up and just like email this to him myself. And so James at the time was consulting, right? Like he still consults, but he was doing it in a kind of different capacity. Anyway, I had watched him time and time again just be like, oh, $5,000. And I was like, wow. I was just in awe of like, how could you charge that much money, right? And so of course, when I'm writing my proposal with the template that he shared with me, like the price that's in there was $5,000. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll send it out. So I think I sent a proposal out for like, I think it was like 3 months of coaching for $5,000. And I remember reading it and just being like, I don't believe a word that I wrote on this page. Like, there is no way that this is actually gonna, like, I did not believe that this was gonna happen, but I sent it anyway.
Yeah.
I sent it anyway. And he didn't take me up on it. He actually disappeared off the face of the planet, which is totally fine. But I learned such a great lesson in that moment. Because, and it had really nothing to do with sales or the offer or the price or any of that. I learned that I had the guts to hit send on that email, right? And on that proposal. And I had the belief in myself to say, what I'm going to teach you and what I'm going to share with you is valuable and it is worthy, right? So that, I don't know if that answers your question or not. I think everybody deals with imposter syndrome, but I think that the only time that you actually deal with it is when you're comparing yourself to other people, right? When you think that there's a way that things are supposed to be, quote unquote, right? And when you think that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by pretty high level entrepreneurs from the very get-go for myself. And I found coaches and mentors who were really very, very specific about the fact that there is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. There's only what's useful and what's not useful for you. And so for me in that moment, it was not useful to compare myself to other people who were further along on their journey, who had bigger businesses or more accolades or more letters behind their name or, more certifications or whatever it might have been. All I knew was that I was helping people overcome situations that they were facing in their lives based on the experience that I had had in mind. Not only that, but there's a huge difference between reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I can help you, and putting a message out that's attracting people to you that are saying, hey, can you help me? Right? Like, I can help you versus, hey, can you help me is a huge difference, especially when it comes to certifications and things like that. Because in all of the years that I've been working on the internet, nobody has ever said, hey, what makes you qualified to help me with this? Right. Because they're actually coming to me. So if they were to ever ask me, I would be like, well, I don't know. You reached out to me. What makes you think that I can help you? Right? Like, it sounds silly and it's funny, but it's true, right? Like, if you were coming to me saying, hey, can you help me? Then it's on me to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Yeah. But the qualification part is over. Like, that already happened.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. I love it. So let's transition now. So we came from kind of this backstory, and now you were able to take this idea of helping people and coaching people and communication, right? And seeing some of where the breakdowns can happen. And now you have been able to turn this into a beautiful business that serves entrepreneurs, high-level entrepreneurs all over the world, through this magic of storytelling. And I love what you say, the story selling, right? Which is, I love that. So let's chat a little bit about that.
Story selling. Oh my gosh, I love it. It kind of came to be, first of all, like, I already told you the story about how I was approached by somebody who was like, hey, will you give this a shot? I said yes. But I think that story selling was actually born out of my resistance to learning how to sell.
Ah.
Yeah, because everyone was like, you need to listen to this sales training program and you need to take this sales class and and I was like, I hate all of the things that these people are saying. Like they're telling me to like find people's pain points and like lean on them and make them cry and tell them how awful like their future is going to be if they don't take action. And that just felt so yucky to me. I was like, I hate all of this. And so true to myself, I was like, well, I'm just going to find my own way.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah. And so for me, it was very much about the emotion and the story of what I was going through. And I was like, if I can connect with people on an emotional level and describe the situation that they find themselves in better than they can describe it themselves, like they're not going to be able to not work with me, right? Like they're going to want to work with me. I'm not going to have to convince them to work with me. And I think that's the big difference for me. Like I don't want to have to convince anyone to do anything, because you've got to do what's right for you, And so as I started writing, I tried the direct response method. I tried copywriting, and I just felt inadequate. I was like, if this is what writing is, I must be the worst writer on the face of the planet. Which is funny now, but I really believed that for a long time. Like even today, people are like, oh, you're a copywriter. And I'm like, no, I'm a story seller. Like there's a difference to me. And so I don't want to talk about features and benefits. I don't want to have bold headlines. I don't want to have things underlined. Like there's no, none of the typical elements that you would find in sales copy is in my copy, because I'm literally writing as if I were writing to my best friend. And I'm just telling them what is going on, right? Like describing a situation to them in a way that's relatable and that they can follow along and say, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I felt like that too, or I've experienced that too, or I'm in that right now. And I can follow and track how you got to where you are now, how you got the lesson that you got. And because I know that you've now been in the situation similar, if not the same to what I'm in, I can reach out and actually ask you for help, or I can actually start a conversation with you about it that can then turn into us working together down the line. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where story selling was born. It was literally just my stubbornness of like not wanting to do it the way that everybody said that I had to. And then I created the story selling framework, which is just a 6-step framework. And I didn't think that it was possible. My boyfriend and I talk a lot about personality profiling. We're big fans of Myers-Briggs. And so he's an ENTJ, which is basically the personification of a factory, right? Like everything has its place, everything has an order, like there's systems and processes for everything. I'm an INFP, which basically means I'm like the manifestation of the meadow, right? Like nothing has any order. Everything's just like growing wild, and it's amazing. And when he comes into the meadow, the butterflies kind of start flying in formation like jet fighters. And when I go into the factory, like vines just start springing up all over the place. So we've kind of met this like happy middle where I understand how valuable the systems and processes and things that he can put in place are. And he's also realized like how influential like creative energy and artists can be, right? So when I was trying to figure out how I did what I did, I was like, there's no way. It's just innate. Like no one can do what I do. It's my art. And he's like, slow down. He's like, they can just like, calm down. And so he and my friend Julie, my really good friend Julie Stoyan, convinced me to keep a notepad by my desk. And they said, every time that you do something that you find yourself doing it over and over again, just write it down. And I was like, this is pointless. But I did it.
Don't fly.
Exactly. I was like, no, like there's butterflies. They're just fluttering. But I did, and I have it right here. I'll show you. This is actually the original I don't know, the version of my story selling framework, because I literally wrote it as I was writing for people. So it's 6 steps. And I'll share them with you. It's super simple. I think that anybody can do it. Now I believe that anyone can do it. Isn't that funny? The first is to assume familiarity. So you want to come in, and like I said, I write everything as if I were writing it to my best friend. So that means that I'm not saying, hi, Charity, right? Like there's no salutation. I respect my readers, and I believe that they're educated enough to know that I'm, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I'm not sitting down to write thousands of emails personally every single day, right? So I just kind of eliminate the need to say like, happy Monday, hi, how have you been? Like, no, just get to it, right?
Dear Mrs.
Dear first name. I'm like, please, no, please just stop it. The second is that and this is around subject lines and headlines, anything like that, is you need to do a curiosity-based pattern interrupt. Right. And so you want it to be something that they're going to be like, wait a minute, what does that say? Right. Like one of the highest open emails that I've written, the subject line was rest in peace, Toys R Us. Right. And it was for an e-commerce business, and it was like RIP Toys R Us. And so it's like, it's enough that it gets your attention. So you're like, rest in peace Toys R Us. But then you're also curious, right? It creates curiosity. So you click on it so that you actually read it. Because you could write the absolute best email of all time, but if nobody opens it, nobody's going to read it, right? So that's step 2. Step 3 is you want to start with high drama. So you want to hook your reader immediately. It's kind of like when you go to the movies and the movie starts and they're like, throw you into the action, right? Like a bank's getting robbed, somebody just got shot, like there's a car being stolen, and you're like, I don't even know who these characters are yet. Like, I don't know what's going on, but like, holy crap. I gotta see what's happening, right?
Yes.
So that's what we want to do with our emails. So a lot of people ask me, well, how do you create high drama? And it can be something as simple as like, I remember the night that my husband and I decided we were going to get divorced. Dun, dun, dun. Right. And you're like, well, what happened? Right. Like what happened? Like maybe your, I don't know, like the dog was coming home. Like you guys got a puppy recently, right? Like in the last couple of months. So you can be like, I got a phone call from the breeder and he was finally ready to come home. And it's like, okay, and then what, right? Like it's very simple to do it if you're looking for the angle. So regardless of if it's a happy story, a sad story, like angry story, whatever it happens to be, you can just be like, boom, right? Like you just drop them right into the story. There's no introduction. There's no, hi, how are you? It's just like you're going to pick up the phone and call your friend and be like, you are never going to guess what just happened. Right? Like that's what you want to do.
I love that. That's how girls talk, right? We call our girlfriend and we're like, it's not like, hey, like small talk, like, how's it going? It's like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah. It's like, I ran into her and she was wearing the ugliest pair of shoes.
I hate talking about shoes.
We're not catty. We're super nice. The fourth thing you want to do is that you want to guide their epiphany, right? And this is very much piggybacking off of what we learned from Russell Brunson about the epiphany bridge, right? Where there's one side of the bridge where you have no idea about what anybody's talking about. And once you get to the other side of the bridge, you understand completely, right? And so I think that was probably the worst explanation of an epiphany bridge ever.
Russell would be so proud.
He would be so disappointed. But it's basically what I'm doing with you guys right now, right? I'm trying to explain what story selling is. So I'm putting it in terms that you understand rather than throwing all of this like techno babble or words that you wouldn't understand the meaning of. And so it's basically taking somebody from the feelings and the emotion or the situation that you found yourself in before you understood what you now understand and are trying to explain to them, right? So you're taking them on this journey with you where they're going to be able to identify with one of the protagonists in the story. They're either going to identify with you, with the other person that you're interacting with, or that the situation occurred. Somehow humans always find a way to be like, it's like when you're little kids and you're just like, oh, like I'm going to be Rainbow Bright and you be the pony. And like, right. Like that's what we want to do. We want to be in the story. So that's what we want to allow them to do in our writing, right? Like we're going to take them across that bridge. The fifth thing, and this is, I think, where it gets really sticky for people, is that you've got to give your reader the win. So I never take people across the epiphany bridge and then turn around and be like, do you see that bridge that I just helped you get across where you didn't understand and now you do? That's what I did. No, we want to call out and we want to speak to the highest and best version of our reader. So we're now going to start using language that helps them understand that this is something that we've always known. We've always understood this.
Yeah.
It's like it's always been, right? So you give them the win. And I think this is hard for people because a lot of us are significance based. We all have an ego and we want to be like, look at the thing that I just taught you. But if you can resist the urge to do that, your people will feel good about themselves. And if they feel good about themselves every time that they read something that they get from you, they're going to be more inclined to read more of it, right?
So good. Yeah, it's making them the hero. And that's
Exactly.
that's the whole point. Like, it's about them, you guys. They're the heroes.
Yeah, they're the hero, totally. And then the sixth thing is just to ask them about it, right? Once you've done the heavy lifting of teaching them something, but you're also letting them have the win where they feel better about themselves for having read your email. Now give them a chance to say, hey, I've been in a situation like that. Like, I've experienced that before. Like, this is what I learned when I was there. Or maybe they say, you know what? I'm stuck in that situation right now. Like, I don't know what to do. And I get that you're on the other side of it, but can you help me? Right. And that's what opens up the door and the conversation of, yeah, I can help you. This is what that looks like, right? These are the programs that I offer. These are the services that I have. And so it becomes a very, very simple process. And you're just doing this over and over and over again with any kind of story that you have in your life. And I tell people, anytime that you have a win, a celebration, anytime that you're angry, anytime that you're about to get on a soapbox and go on a rant, if you close a sale, if you totally like bomb a sales call, like whatever it happens to be, just put it out there to your people and spin it in a way where you're just like, this is what I've learned, and you don't have to be at the goal line in order to turn around and help somebody. You can be 2 or 3 steps ahead of them. And just as long as you have clarity about what those steps have taught you, you can help somebody else get through them.
I love that so much. And I know you have this on your website, so I know if people are going to want to grab the framework that you have, let's make sure that people can either get to know you, follow you, stalk you, grab your storytelling framework, even hire you if they want to.
Totally.
Where can people find you?
Well, they can find the story selling framework at yaragolden.com, and that's Yara, Y-A-R-A, golden like the color.com. And I'm always on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as, The Art of Story Selling. It's so fun. It's so fun to be able to help people do this. And it's really one of those things where, you hear people say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I didn't buy it. I was just like, no, work feels like work. But even though this has its challenges and its difficulties, like, I love what I do, and I love to be able to help people tell their stories. And I'm happy to make this grow and do that. So it's a blessing.
So good. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise. And you guys, I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes so that you guys can grab that story selling framework and geek out on all of the fun stories that Yara shares. Definitely find her on Facebook. I just love reading all of her stories, and she ends them all with like a little XO and a little kiss. And you feel like you're great friends with her, and that and as an entrepreneur, like, you either want to follow the framework or hire her. Write your stories for you.
It's working.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise. And it was just an honor to chat with you again and to connect with you. And I'm excited to support you and to continue to cheer you on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope it brought some value and some fun into your business and life. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and even share the episode with a fellow business bestie who you know will love it. It helps us continue to attract top-level guests and reach more and more women who are on their journey in business just like you. Remember that when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. Cheers to your success.